Hey, what's going on, Internet? So today I want to talk to you about OpenAI's O3 model and how its ability to utilize tools while reasoning is the next leap in AI. Now, I want to talk about this because oftentimes when I see people talking about O3, they talk about the usefulness of it and the intelligence, but they tend to skip over this really important piece, which is why the model is so much more intelligent, is its ability to utilize tools while reasoning, not after and not reactively. This is a huge step. It's huge because it makes the model's response more accurate, but also it makes them more capable for more complex tasks. So in this video, let's get into discussing why it's so important and also how we can utilize these models and future models like it in the future more effectively. As always, we have our beautiful image from the OpenAI gods. And we can see here, we have a really intelligent person, a man in this case. We'll call them O3, utilizing tools to be more intelligent. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I spent some time going back and forth with different models trying to figure out how do I convey this idea in a single chart. And I think this does the job. And we'll talk through exactly what this is and what it represents. So at the first, you can see at the top, we're talking about there's 3 levers for scaling now. In the past, there used to be 2. Well, probably a lot more, but in the context of this conversation, used to be 2, now there's 3. Debatable. There could have been 4. But anyways, here's the levers for scaling. So on one axis, we have the model's capability, so what they're capable of, and as we increase, it's more and more complex. Another axis, we have training time compute or training compute, and this I would say encapsulates both the amount of data used for training and also the amount of compute used for training as well as time. So we'll kind of correlate to that axis. The more we move over to the right, there's more data, compute, and time. And then last one here is inference time. So this is the amount of compute that we allow the AI to utilize during inference, which means when we ask it a question, it's actively utilizing compute in that session. That's called inference. So it's active compute for the response to our question or the task we've given it. So those are the axes that we're looking at this visual through. Now the next thing are what is inside the visual. So these shaded colors here are focused on capabilities. So how capable is the model based off of what it's utilizing and the increased capability over time. And at the bottom, we have the base training compute. So you can envision just this yellow section being AI models that are just the foundational model. So it's just the foundational model based off of pre-training, and we have that pre-training that we placed into your useful hands. So think of models such as Claude's 3.7 without thinking. It could be probably GPT 4.1 without any other tools or anything like that. It's just the base model answering questions for you without any access to other tools or thinking. So we then stack on top of this the ability to think. So that's going to be Claude 3.7 thinking, that's going to be O3, that's going to be O4 mini, all the different reasoning models I can think, Gemini 2.5 Pro. And the amount of time we allow it to think before it responds to us correlates to actually the higher quality answer. This is something OpenAI has discussed. And it's surprising that there is a correlation there because historically, humans like you and I, when we use these tools, at least I ask myself, if the model thinks for a longer period of time, there's a higher probability the answer is going to be more accurate and more interesting. That's just like a weird vibe check that humans have. And that's actually panned out in the data, which is interesting. And then the third thing here is tool use. And not just tool use, but tool use within the reasoning process. Now, many models today, most of the models you use today, when they come to using tools, is reactive. So it uses a tool, likely based off of you asking it to. So it's, hey, use this canvas feature, or hey, create this image with this image feature, etc. Or it's based off of like a keyword match. So you've stated something along the lines of mathematics. It's likely going to pull a Python interpreter or a calculator to do the math for you and then respond with that. So it's going to do kind of a keyword match, but it's not necessarily going to reason as to when and why it should use the tool. It's more reactive in nature. But that's where the difference comes into play, and that's the biggest part about O3. The biggest difference with O3 is its ability to utilize tools in the reasoning process. And by doing this, it's increased its ability to not only be more intelligent, aka more capable and useful in different use cases, but also it's more accurate, has less hallucinations, etc. And that's what this overall picture here is showing, is that the more tool use we give these AI models, the more likely it's going to be more capable for us. And that's what I'm trying to depict here, is that the tool use is another lever to increase the intelligence and capability of the models. And then the last line here, this one that's darker going up here, this correlates to the amount of inference time and compute we give to these AI. And that goes to the point that I made previously, that if I give the AI more and more inference compute when it's responding to my questions actively, it's likely going to give us back a more intelligent answer that's more useful for our use case. So hopefully this visual gives you an idea of why O3 is so important and how it differs from all the other models that have been previously released, and how many other models in the future will likely follow this path, because that's what all the AI providers do. They follow each other, mostly. And they're likely going to start incorporating the use of tools inside the reasoning process to increase its ability to achieve more complex tasks, because agents are the new fad and everybody wants to follow agents. So they need agents that can actively use tools more effectively, as well as increase their intelligence and lower hallucinations. So that's kind of the big reason as to why O3 is different and why it's unique. Now, in addition to this, I wanted to kind of give you some practical use cases of both where O3 and O3 like models shine, and also when to think about utilizing O3 versus other models for other use cases. So I'll first start with practical use cases where O3 shines, both personally from my experience and also what other people have discussed online. And I don't want to talk about kind of toy use cases that are interesting in prototypes, but I want to talk about use cases that are practical, that you and I can use every single day to increase productivity, save time at work, generate revenue, etc. So the first one here is a productivity hack. So you can use these tools to convert your notes. So say you have written notes on a notebook. A lot of people do that. And you want to convert those into not just digitalize them, but you also want them to kind of think about how to prioritize them and all that stuff. So this is just an example of a bunch of sticky notes here. And all these sticky notes, you're asking it to basically create a to-do list based on these and categorize it based off of work, personal, admin, and you can even ask it to prioritize it as well. In this case, they didn't, but you can. So then what it does is it'll utilize tools to not only just do that, but it's going to take this image, it's going to shift it horizontally so it can see it and read it so it's not vertical. It's going to then zoom in and crop each one of those sticky notes to extract the text from it, and then it's going to put it into a to-do list. That in itself is a process of using AI, tools, cropping, etc. through the reasoning process before it responds. And that's why it's so good at doing tasks like this. So you can see we have the categorized list. But like I said, you can use it for other notes that you take, and you can say, don't just categorize, but also prioritize based off of my priorities, which you would have to obviously give into the prompt. So that's one use case. We'll do another one up here first. So this one here is a thumbnail buddy. So I use O3 as my thumbnail buddy. And the reason I use O3 is because it's fast, and also it's actually quite useful in this use case, where what I'll do is I'll give it a series of thumbnails that I've drafted myself, or more likely my wife has. And once we have these thumbnails, I'll pass it in and say, okay, based off of best practices for YouTube thumbnails as of 2025, which of these will get the most clicks, and also in what ways can I improve them? So it'll then go through and do a ton of research, and you can see that this is just a snippet from it, but it does reasoning, research, reasoning, research, reasoning, and then gives me a breakdown and a synthesis of which one of these are most suitable, and also how to change the thumbnail. And it even gives specifics, I remember, for this one, where like it would say to change the background color to a certain color, change the text to a certain color, even add a specific item in here to draw their attention to it, etc. So it gives you a lot of very specific items, puts it on a table so you can then horizontally assess. So that's another example. So it's good at visually identifying things and giving feedback on those. Another one here that this is more of a meta use case that I'll give you a specific example for, which hence the arrow, that's what this represents. So the meta point here is that oftentimes people ask, when should I use O3 versus deep research? So remember, Perplexity, Gemini, Claude now, Grok, who else? ChatGPT, obviously. I think all these different players offer a deep research-like feature where the agentic use case goes off and researches a variety of things and comes back with a report. Now the question is, when should I use that versus O3? Because right now, a lot of people have discussed and stated that O3 is kind of like deep research light. So you can think about it as a lighter version of deep research. And sometimes I've found through my own personal experience is that the responses are even sometimes more higher accuracy and high quality from O3 versus deep research, depending on the task. So if you have less time and you don't want to waste so much time on waiting, you can use O3. If you have more time and a more specific question, you can use deep research. And I'll give more specific insights into when to use those in a second. But here's an example of an O3 optimal question for market research. So this was shown through OpenAI's documentation for the models. So this is when they released the models, they gave a bunch of information, blogs, and use cases, one of which was a business use case. And in here, the business use case is market analysis. Now, the question here is, why is this so useful and why is it effective? O3 is optimal for broad questions, and then deep research is more optimal for specific questions where you have a lot more context, and you maybe even have sources you would like it to go and check and pull information from. So think of deep research as something that you've thought through more methodically. You have a lot of context associated. You want to spend more time and get a lot more back as well, because deep research is going to give you probably 10 to 30 pages in length, and then O3 is just going to give you maybe a page, but it's going to be more broad and maybe even more analytically driven based off of the kind of stats and the mathematics it does behind the scenes. So if we look at this example, the example here is about a hotel chain. So it says, I own a boutique hotel chain with locations in Lisbon, Berlin, and London. I plan to expand into a new country in Europe and a city in Asia in 2026. What factors, such as tourism growth, seasonal occupancy patterns, and local economic indicators, best predict success? I want to be ahead of the curve and be the next hot city before others. Pool regional travel data, economic statistics, and hotel occupancy rates, analyze trends visually, and recommend ideal expansion locations. So it's basically asking it to pull specific data sets, then tell me which of these are most suitable for what I'm trying to achieve. And you can see in this example, it's going to reason. It's then going to search a bunch of resources. It's going to reason again, search a bunch of resources, reason again, search a bunch of resources. And as you can see throughout the reasoning process, it states specifically where its head is at currently, what it's trying to achieve next. So you can see for the Asian locations, it's say, okay, I'm thinking about these cities because I feel like these are most suitable for the question, but I also need to find more key factors and data sets to validate that this assumption is accurate. So it then goes through and starts researching and finding more information that's relevant for the question that was asked. And at the end, it comes out with I think, a pretty good breakdown. And you can read through and see the example here. And the reason that O3 is more optimal for this question is because it's a broad question, not a specific one. All right, so that was our use case there. All right, and now we're going to get into Dragon Ball Z, my fellow nerds. So for this specific example I wanted to walk through is gnarly bugs. So we've talked about this in a previous video, so I won't spend too much time on it. But if you're coding with these models, you'll understand that when you're trying to solve a bug, depending on how difficult a bug is, you want to upgrade the intelligence of the model to achieve more and more or solve more and more complex bugs when it comes to coding. So in this example, we have GPT 4.1 solving the smallest bug and the easiest bug. And if that doesn't work, this is my process. This is what I'll follow. So if 4.1 doesn't work, I'll then bump this up to 3.7 thinking and say, okay, can this solve the bug that we're running into? If this struggles, then I'll bump this up to 2.5 Pro to solve the problem. And an additional note for 2.5 Pro is that if I need to toss the entirety of the code base into the model, I'll then use 2.5 Pro period because it has the largest context window right now. And actually 4.1 has a large one as well, but it's not as intelligent and or effective at solving bugs like 2.5 Pro is. So 2.5 Pro has a 1 million context window, so I'll toss it in there and have it assess the entire code base to solve the problem. And then if this even struggles with it, then I'll pass it off to O3 if the code base is small enough and or the context is small enough to fit within the context window for O3, which I think is around 200,000 tokens. I'll pass it to O3, and O3 oftentimes solves many of the bugs that these other models can't. And that's happened to me probably 20 to 30 times in the last couple of weeks where I've had a gnarly bug nobody else could fix, and then O3 fixed it probably in 1 to 2 shots. So it just shows you how much better it is at solving more complex tasks that not just are complex coding problems, but are complex in the sense that you have to stitch together multiple items across an entire code base to understand exactly where the weak points are and then systematically fix that. I think it's the complexity of the expanded code base and logic, not just the gnarliness of the specific code itself. So that's our gnarly bug use case. And then now that we've talked about use cases and examples, I want to move on to more meta understanding of when to use these models. So I've already touched on this a bit already, so we'll kind of go through this section quickly. Is when you're doing deep research tasks, like I've stated here, if it's a high-level question, use O3. If it's a more targeted question that has a lot of context and you want a lengthier output, then use deep research. We'll leave it there. And then for a brain dump. So I just basically wanted to brain dump all the different use cases I can think of that I've used most frequently that I feel like models are most suitable for. So, like I've stated previously, high-level research I use O3. I probably use that the most for research period right now. When it comes to writing, I use 3.7 and 3.5 Sonnet. Sometimes GPT 4.1 if I have good instructions, very specific instructions. It's pretty good at following those. For specific research, deep research, like I've stated previously, also I need a lot of long prompt with context and targeted questions. Coding, see the previous thing. For UI design, I refer on 3.7. So 3.7 thinking is pretty good at creating high quality UIs. Anything that's a large file, so remember 1 million context window for 2.5. I'll then throw in videos for it to analyze. I'll throw in large files for it to analyze, etc. If there's targeted feedback that I'm seeking on a document, on a thumbnail, on a contract, anything like that, I'll seek feedback from O3, even on business ideas or product ideas, or if the idea fits into the market and there's a good product market fit based off of research, I'll then ask O3 for that as well. Deeper analysis, I'd say these two are kind of like bundled, where this tends to be the best when it comes to understanding what to do next in those situations. But also one other thing I want to mention here is expert outsourcing. So this is something that I've found myself doing more and more. So we'll kind of zoom into this down here for a second. And export outsourcing, oftentimes you'll hear people like me on YouTube or a podcast or have them write a report, etc. These people, they synthesize and try to make explicit their knowledge and perspective on a certain topic. So it could be finance, it could be marketing or sales or whatever, investing, and they synthesize it into a document and or a video. Well, you can convert those videos and documents into custom GPTs and or cloud projects. So you can try to templatize their knowledge into a cloud project or a GPT, or actually a GPT project is probably better. I really don't use custom GPTs anymore because of many reasons. And the reason I try to systematize and templatize their knowledge is if you can put their knowledge into a knowledge base and create a high quality system instruction, you can basically have an expert at hand at all times. So if I need some help with YouTube and thumbnails, if I need help with sales and cold outreach and emails, if I need help with something else, I can take somebody's brain, put it into a cloud project or GPT project, and I can then ask it questions and have it actually create stuff for me on my behalf with that knowledge in the back of its head. So you can outsource your expertise to these models if you know how to effectively grab that knowledge and the high quality system instructions and bundle them together for a project to then get both answers and output of tasks from it. And internet. That's it. That's a summary. So to conclude, O3, like I said, is different specifically for its ability to utilize tools through the reasoning process, which drastically increases both its intelligence and its capability of achieving more complex tasks over long periods of time. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this informative, educational, all that stuff. So if you did, please reshare it with your friends. And if you'd like to work with me, I have a company called Gradient Labs where we help organizations implement AI internally to increase productivity, save time and money, and even sometimes generate revenue. So if you're interested in that, below is a link for a free call that's 30 minutes to see if there's a good fit between the two of us. And with that being said, Internet, I'll see you next time.